Hello and welcome to today's edition of Velocity Kinetics, and this is the long promised back-to-back. So what we have here is one Ford Fiesta and one Suzuki Baleno. Now, there is one disclaimer there are a few disclaimers I need to cover. One, I'm insured to drive both. Peter is not insured to drive this, so if you see any outside shots of this driving, it is me at the wheel. With this, it'll either be him or me, because he's my cameraman today. Sarah's been replaced. Now there are a few features on both these cars we're not going to compare, because this is a middle model. It's SZ-T. This is Titanium X, is it not? Peter has confirmed it is a Titanium X. So you're effectively comparing middle of the range with high middle, lower upper. For instance, that's got a facility on it where it can parallel park itself. This does not. But ultimately, both cars, they're very similar. They're powered by a similar layout of engines. It's forced induction, a turbocharged 3-cylinder 1-litre turbos. This is a 109 PS. This is 125. Although I'm very sure this car, and I will double check it, and somewhere around here there will be some statistics overlaid, but I'm pretty sure this car is lighter than that one. This one has a pretty nice boot on it for what it is. It's got a slightly better boot on it than I would say the Baleno has. Let me just see if I can pop it with where I've left the car. Well, if I had left my car unlocked, wouldn't it, people? Yep, you're coming this way? Yep. Come on, people. You see, the Fiesta's got a slightly better boot, probably by virtue of the fact it's a bit deeper. Baleno overall internally is a bigger car. A lot of the stats will say it's bigger than a Ford Focus, which I'm semi-inclined to believe because of how much stuff I got in the car when I was moving house. Both cars have one thing in common. They're filthy. Both really badly need a wash. Both 5 doors. Let's shut that boot, save a bit of battery. So let's get your snout poked inside. If you come this way, Peter, let's get the snout poked inside here. So as you see, Fiesta's got a little bit more stuff in it. Just ignore our filming gubbins. The Fiesta is a 6-speed, 6 forward gears, whereas the Baleno is only 5 forward gears. Believe the Fiesta is faster in a straight line, but really with this sort of car, you're never really going to be doing that sort of speed. The seat itself is slightly better. Although for my wide frame it doesn't, my wide frame prefers the Baleno seat, but they're very comfy. Let's go in the back of this one, or do you want to go in the front of this one?
Yeah, back of this one.
So you see, again, pretty big for what it is. Again, very comfortable, very user friendly, very family friendly. Cost pretty usable. I think even both down to the fact that fuel tank's on the passenger side. Right, so let's stick the snout inside the Baleno. So you can already tell the internal is not quite the same quality as we're looking at on the Fiesta. That's not to say Suzuki have cut corners, but they're two different categories of vehicle really. You're comparing what is now selling, this Baleno at the time of recording, the SZ-T is about £12,500, maybe 11.5. I think it was 11.5. Get that? And you're comparing that against a car that, what did Dad say, it cost about 19,000, something like that. I mean, it's a lot for a Fiesta. But again, you see it's got quite a lot of leg room. I can get in and out of it. You've probably seen the video in the very long-term review when I reviewed my last Baleno. This one has really spoiler on it as standard. The Fiesta doesn't. The Baleno has these grey diamond cut wheels as standard. This is on the SZ-T, that is the SZ-3 I do not believe has it. The Fiesta's got a nice set of wheels on it as well. What are we comparing? We're running on Bridgestone versus Michelin's. Anyway, even running on different tyres. Now, let's see if we can. We'll get up and close and dirty under the bonnet now, shall we? So, Suzuki call their 3-cylinder engine booster jet, 1, 2, 3 cylinders. We've got a whacking huge turbo at the back. I've driven this without the turbo on it. This is the standard engine in the Celerio without the turbo on. The Celerio is putting at about 65, maybe 70 PS, so they've massively increased the power output, and obviously probably had to do some various head massaging and different cylinder heads and the like. But it is very, you might hear a little bit of thrum going on in both cars when we put the foot to the floor, within the speed limit of course. Whilst at Velocity Kinetics we enjoy a little bit of speed, whilst we're on public roads we do not condone speeding in any way, because you're not going to be any better than anyone else. It goes against the hashtag everyone wants to get home. So, let's look at the Fiesta, shall we? So, inside the Fiesta engine bay, still got the same engine. There's probably a big turbo tucked in down the back there. It's a lot more compact in the bay than it is in the Baleno. That engine in that Baleno though, you can get it all the way up in an S-Cross. That's a lot of car for it to carry around. This, as you can see, it's on the one hand I like the way Suzuki have hidden everything, because look at that, it's all correct, but it's a bit ugly to look at, if you like looking at that sort of thing. I don't think there's an unturbocharged version of this, is there, Peter? No, I mean the last Fiesta, I drove this car the other day just to get used to it, because I'm insured on it, but the last Fiesta I drove properly was a 1.25 car that I learnt to drive in. I say both cars are going to be... That doesn't clip in, does it? It just sits...
No, push it down in.
I've got to push it down in?
Yeah.
Ah, there we go. See, not as intuitive as the Baleno, but then again, I've had one for so long. So, we're going to go to Santom Downham, and just before you head off, just crossed my mind. In the last green screen video I did about the Cougar, or talking about the SUV, should I say, and I mentioned someone's bought a Ford Cougar in my family, and I absolutely lambasted them for it. Now I stand by most of the comments I made in that video, and the reason why I say most is I now know the full circumstances to why that car had to be bought. And suffice to say, it's not my place to say, I'm not going to tell you the full ins and outs, but let's just say the person did not have a lot of time to choose the car that they would have wanted, so they're very happy with it. It's a lot easier for them to get in and out of, which is ultimately the important bit, and it's not as big of an engine as it was in their previous car, which I think was a XC70. But I stand by all the points about the SUV in general, but about that particular Cougar, I issue my retraction, my apologies. So, let's hit the road, shall we?
This is the left.
What, Santom Downham?
Yeah.
Right, left it is. So whilst we drive to Santom Downham, let's compare these two vehicles on a statistical level. So we've got the Baleno SZ-T, which is a 1 litre 3-cylinder turbocharged engine, and we've got a Ford Fiesta Titanium. I need to clarify, it's just a Titanium, not a Titanium X, which is also a 1 litre 3-cylinder turbo. The Baleno has a 5-speed gearbox, whereas the Fiesta has a 6-speed gearbox. The Baleno, at the time of recording, you can purchase for £11,499 in the ST trim as I have, which is currently offering a £3,750 saving to customers. However, I paid more than that when I bought my car. It was about the 13,000–14,000 range that I paid. The Fiesta Titanium enters in at £18,320. One that is tested, I believe, actually sells for about £20,000 with the extras it's got on it. The Baleno is 46.8 miles per gallon, whereas the Fiesta is 49.6. The Baleno is 111 horsepower, whereas the Fiesta is 125 PS. Now, there is some conflicting differences in the actual horsepower rating for the SZ-T Baleno, because I've looked and seen 111, I've seen 109, and then there's been variants in whether it's been horsepower or PS. So I've just taken what I can off the Suzuki website, and that claims 111 horsepower, and Ford claim 125 PS. 0 to 60 time for the Baleno is 11.4 seconds, with a top speed of 127 miles an hour, or claimed 127 miles an hour. The Fiesta is 9.9 seconds to 60, and the top speed, I couldn't find a confirmed one, but it'll be somewhere around about the 130, 135 miles an hour mark, I would have assumed. Now, the CO2 output, the Baleno, depending on what gearbox you've got, it's 105 grams of CO2 per kilometre if a manual gearbox, or 115 grams of CO2 per kilometre if you have an automatic gearbox, whereas the Fiesta doesn't even split the difference, and it comes out 106 grams of CO2 per kilometre. The big difference between the two cars, I would say, is the actual weight of them. So according to carbuyer.co.uk, the Baleno weighs in at 935 kilograms, but according to Ford.co.uk, their brochure for the Fiesta weighs in at 1,190 kilograms. So the Baleno is, let's have a look, that is well on the way to 200 kilograms lighter, which you would have thought it would have had better miles per gallon for it. The load capacity of both cars, the Baleno has 756 litres seats down, the Fiesta is 1,093 litres seats down, which I thought it would have been the other way around, given the Baleno seems to sit slightly squarer and bigger, but it's still an impressive number. However, the Suzuki is 320 litres seats up, whereas the Fiesta is only 311 seats up. The two are not being compared fairly, because they're two, as mentioned at the start of it, they're two different types of vehicle. You can't help but wonder, even with the Baleno without its customer saving, which would put it out at about the 15,000 range, that's still a lot cheaper than the Fiesta, and given at the time of recording that it's nearly £7,000 less, you can't help but question why would you buy the Fiesta, because with that £7,000 you could have much less finance or buy yourself a second vehicle. But anyway, Paige and I should now have gotten to Santom Downham, and we will rejoin the action there. So, we're at Santom Downham, just parked outside a lovely little church. Going to do a quick blast around a couple of roads. GoPro strapped on. Not decided as of yet which way around the video is going to be once we're edited, but let's a go. I'm not sure how I'm going to nail the dismount. Prepare for some grinding. Ooh. Note yourself. Reverse the Fiesta off. Jesus. So it's a lovely little bit of wood. Apologies if the video's a bit quiet, because a bit dark, but we're going through tunnels of trees, or tree tunnels we used to call it. So we're starting off with the Baleno first because it's my car. So put your foot down. Keep to about 50 around these sort of roads that we're on. It's got a lovely pull. As you've probably felt, it didn't feel like the engine was lurching or chugging trying to get that done. And effectively, between me and my brother, we weigh 3 people, as in I weigh 2, he's just a normal weight person. GoPro's hanging on in there nicely. The steering in this, it's nice and direct. See, that was just me. It's nice and direct. It's more of a hydraulic system than the Fiesta's electronic system. I've got my dash cam fitted, but that's my dash cam, not a Suzuki one, although I think the Ignis does come with one. Clutch has got a nice feel to it. Brakes are nice underfoot. Like I say, the engine, I'm just going to put the window down just a second. Do you hear that? Makes a nice... You wouldn't think it was 3 cylinders, would you? Would you? No. You can hear the. I don't know if did you hear it whistle? Did you hear the turbo whistle?
I did hear it whistle. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're going to put you there with the SLR in a minute. So yeah, it's a nice car to drive. The seat for me is better, but it's because it supports a more wider frame. Ooh, twig. You think I'm going to be able to do a quick flick of the UE here?
I did it in my first driving lesson here, so. I think it's possible.
It is possible. We've got a reversing camera fitted on this as standard on an SZ-T. The 3, as far as I'm aware, doesn't come with it. As previously covered, reverse is not the nicest of gears to find in this car some days. Not the nicest gears to find. This car, the previous one I had running at 54.6 miles a gallon, which is really close to the 57.2 they list. It's got, let's say, nice power band, nice torque. I can go from about 5 miles an hour up to 60 miles an hour in second gear. The third is ridiculously wide. I hardly ever use fourth gear really. I sort of use it on the way to other gears, if that makes sense. I did once have to do a semi-handbrake turn in my old one of these because I'd skidded on some black ice, but it's not, like I say, it's not a bad car at all, and I think you would really, really struggle. Just pulling over because the road isn't quite wide enough for two. That gives me an excuse to hoof it again. I just changed. I'll rattle up through the gears. I like to give a good burst of acceleration myself. But like I say, it's a really, really nice little car to drive. What's going on here? Have they broken down? This is why you've got to pay attention when you're on these country roads. That's why I'm sort of speaking in splurges, really, isn't it?
Yeah. You never know what's going to come around the corner.
No, you do not. Right. Let's do a turn in here. Ooh. Stick the dismount. He is weirdly following me, that VW behind me, but my GoPro doesn't distract him. Right, so he's just come out of a side, there's a Polo stroke Golf behind me, he's come out of a side turning to then do a giant U-ey. He could have just turned, Jesus Christ. Oh well. Anyway, right, let's find that spot. But like I said, it's nice to drive, good clutch, good brakes. Gearbox on this one's a little iffy, but as I've mentioned, that is probably because it doesn't get driven as hard as the other one used to, as in the other one used to do 70 miles a day, 5 days a week, occasionally 6. So it just had a lot of usage through need to be used. So I'm just going to drop Peter off here to be murdered, and sorry mate, that's why I asked you to bring a shovel.
What shovel?
A double cross. We're just being weird. Right, Right, so now we're in the Fiesta. Now, unlike that's a standard key start. This is keyless go. Hence why we're not really doing a direct comparison, because I'm not a fan of keyless go myself. Now, this Fiesta does have quite a nifty little feature. So if you just point that down here. Now, much like the Baleno, when you hit reverse, we're in reverse, but there's no camera come on. What you have to do in this is got a little plunger on the neck, and then the camera comes on. Now, in some ways I think that's better, because you've got the option to not rely on the camera, which admittedly a lot of the time I rely quite heavily on that. But then again, if you've got a reversing camera, surely it should engage once you've...
I don't want to make you sound stupid, Chris, but actually the first reverse gear you did just engage 5th gear.
Did I?
Yeah.
Well, it still doesn't engage the camera when you first use it, though, does it? No. Right, now I've only driven this car once before today, so apologies, my gear changes are not the smoothest, but it's... let's go. So like I said, still the same thing. This gearbox I find a little more choppy than the Baleno, but it's not a bad. It's not a bad gearbox. What this Ford does, and anyone who owns a Ford will know exactly what I mean by this. You can just drive it. Ford I've ever known of, and anyone that I've known of that has a Ford, sorry that was in my way, anyone I've known of that has a Ford, they all say one thing: you can just get in and drive them. It's Ford's party piece. Just get in and drive them. No need to set them up for hours, no need to get used to how they feel. The steering in this is a little lighter than my Balenos, but I think it's because, as mentioned, it's got that facility where it will parallel park itself. Probably to accommodate the extra electronics required in that. The brakes on this are nice. The clutch has got a much shorter throw than my car. The gearbox is much more precise and on point. Windscreen wipers are not as good as the Baleno, but it could also just be the ones that were factory fitted at the dealership. If the dealership have had anything to do with it, then they may not be very good. What this will have is that patented, I don't know if it's still patented, but I think a lot of other manufacturers have managed to copy it, but it does have that Ford demist system where it heats the front windscreen up, which is a godsend. The amount of time in the winter I spend with my Baleno just doing not a lot. This is why we have to be careful on these roads, because that Jag had not really compensated very much. Right, so this is the end of the run, at least the forwards run. I've just asked a lot of first gear there by asking to put it in there. Right, let's try and get this done nice and quick. Almost speed reversing could almost be made an Olympic sport, couldn't it? This car does have parking sensors on it, front and back, which the Baleno doesn't have. Now, the Baleno can have them. I know Stoneacre in Middlesbrough would fit some garage ones. Let's give it a little. It's a little more muted, the 3-cylinder. It's still a nice sound. Tiny bit more muted. It has a bit more get up and go, but because it's producing that tiny bit more horsepower, it has a little bit more turbo lag. Now, it's not massive turbo lag. Compared to Baleno, it has a lot, but it's still, in the grand scheme of things, actually, it gets up and goes pretty well. Ford have mastered this engine. They've been using them for years. This has a 6-speed, and I really find it hard to find 6th, but more because all the other cars I've had that I've owned and I've learnt in, 6th is reversed, so naturally it feels like an unnatural thing when I've gone to 5th. and it's almost like a psychological, I can't reverse. I'd say if you buy one of these, you will be in such good hands, because I said Fords just have that, you know what I mean, don't you? Because you learnt in a, what was it, a Mini and a VW Fox?
I didn't learn a Mini, it was just a VW Fox.
But compared, the Fiestas just have something about them, don't they? And most Fords do, where you can just get in.
Oh, they are so easy to drive. They're probably one of the best cars you can get if you're a first-time driver.
Japanese cars like the Suzuki for years they're always more to insure. But I would say, I mean, my parents have considered getting one, haven't they? Our parents have considered getting one. More than once. As to how seriously is another thing entirely, but I have to take them at their word. So, here we are. Let's say the gearbox is a tiny bit on the notchy side, but as I've mentioned, because I'm relatively new to this car, that'll be the only reason why. So, gearbox is getting a bit smoother to go with as we've done that those quick panning shots. But we'll get the cars back side by side and we'll deliver you a conclusion. Need to sort that mat out before you get back in it. I've kicked it up. So there we are. That's the end of Back2Back. Baleno versus Fiesta. They're both really good little cars, and you get a lot for your money on both of them. Ultimately, for my own one, I'd go with the Baleno. But you know, you're going to have a good car whichever round you go with it. That Ford makes some interesting hissing noises when you're coming off throttle, when you're on turbo. This makes a rather nice whistling. I don't know if we got it on the video. Ultimately, I think if you're going for a thrash around a country road, if you really want to feel, that's the one you go for. But if you're wanting to have a little bit more reassurance as you go and just want to be able to get it and go, it's the Fiesta. As I said, my choice, Suzuki. Peter's choice, Fiesta. There is no wrong answer. A lot depends on your budget, but give them both a look, see what you think, and we thank you for joining us for this episode of Back2Back. Hopefully we can make more. Remember to subscribe to the Facebook page on the YouTube channel, and please remember to donate via the PayPal link, paypal.me/Velocity Kinetics, and then hopefully we can bring you more stuff like this, or if nothing else, do it again but with better quality video and microphones. But until then, safe driving. And where the hell did I leave my car, please? So, the equipment we used for today's filming, aside from one brother, is a Nikon SLR. It's a D3200. It's seen better days, but that's what we used. And then we've used an £11 suction cup mount that we bought off Amazon, or rather I bought off Amazon, from the test footage video. That's what I used. There's this little 4K camera, which I've set to film in 1080. Just bought it off Wish for £17. Then there's this. It's a Kit Vision Escape HD5, which is what's done some of the footage as well. That's also 1080. And then for the internal shots of me driving, my brother used his phone, which is a OnePlus 6.
Yeah, it's a OnePlus 6.
OnePlus 6. So actually, you can do this sort of thing without spending a lot of money.